Hi there, it's Ian Wright here talking. This is the fourth in a series of kind of introduction podcasts about elements and threads that are involved in working with and kind of ameliorating the effects of anxiety, which is rife and increasing all the time. I can't tell you how many patients come to the practice, from young children to the elderly, actually, all with different causes and different processes, but an underlying themes of anxiety, and I'm working with it a lot now. And I decided to really engage with this directly and do some work and put together some stuff around it. And I'm in the process of researching and writing and working with people with a variety of techniques for changing anxiety patterns, remodeling parts of the brain, the amygdala, etc., using specific techniques to change these brain pathways, actually. Anyway, I just want to talk. This is called Embracing Uncertainty. I was this weekend I was at the Hay Literary Festival, which is a literary festival in Wales in the United Kingdom, and it's a very famous literary festival, and we try and go there every year because there's a lot of interesting new ideas, etc. One of the lectures that both my son and I were sitting in was a lecture about change. And these guys had brought out of this book, and they've been doing lots of research, and where they've been talking to CEOs of top companies, politicians, power players, really, and they are coming up with this thread of language right now, which is, in their words, is concerning. There's this big element of fear. They have these deep fears, this insecurity. They fear that the world is changing too quickly for them to keep up with. Now, we're talking about CEOs, so mainly, and politicians, and actually, yes, possibly it is a little bit too much for them, because maybe there are new models forming, and they're not going to be able to, hold the power in some ways anymore, but that's a different subject. But the question, I suppose, using all this terminology and this fear, this uncertainty, possibly an increased time of uncertainty politically, there are elements which polarize us and are not so embracing of difference, and that seems to be a global phenomenon. So you could say that there are times right now of increased insecurity. Now, that underlying thread and element within society, the greater kind of consciousness around us, can have a big effect if we have a tendency to anxiety. But I just want to embrace that and engage with that actual thing directly. The first thing I'd like to say is this change and this element of fast change new? Is it new? My feeling as change has always been fast. In the ancient days, for example, the Mayan empires fell and changed so quickly. The Roman Empire is the same. Large empires have risen and suddenly fallen, and that's just been the way of the world. Big changes, even in the 20th century, happened almost overnight. Incredible stuff like the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Soviet Union, the change of the Soviet Union, overnight almost, as with apartheid in South Africa. Incredible fast changes, and life continues. So I want to look at this idea of that life may be uncertain and groundless, and the idea that we should embrace that. Now, the Buddhists were very good at this idea of embracing uncertainty. It's a very strong tenet within Buddhism. For example, the Buddhist monks, especially the Tibetan Buddhists, would sit. The monks would be sent to burial grounds. Not actually burial, because actually the bodies weren't buried. The bodies were just piled and left to rot, and the birds were there to feed them. And the young monks, young as 8, 9, up to 13, 14 years old, would have to sit all day and look at these bodies degenerating. And what they were likely to meditate over were elements like, maybe we're not just this carbon-based, degenerating skeleton tissue. Maybe we're more than that. That spirit, that buzz, that little essence of us, maybe that's more than just the physical. Also, I think the idea of everything is impermanent. Nothing stays the same. Really, nothing stays the same. Everything will change. Our only certainty is that we'll die, And this idea of really accepting and looking directly at our deaths in order to live and truly accept and be in the moment. So by accepting death to really live in the moment. Interesting enough, though, Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, had an opposing view to that. He hated the idea of death. He loved life far too much and really talked about embracing it. The interesting thing, his response is the same as the Buddhist monks, even though his view on looking at death was the opposite. He wanted to embrace life as much as you could and to make the very best of yourself in the moment. So both sides talk about this idea of fully living and embracing actually life, and also the uncertainty. This idea of groundlessness, that nothing is certain, and our only certainty in life is that we're going to die. Now, if you want to go the Aristotle way or you want to go the Buddhist way, either way, I think, means actually we need to embrace life. I personally like the Buddhist way of looking and accepting that actually there is an end and it may go on, we may live on, but it doesn't matter. Aristotle did not want to engage with an afterlife. He said, this is life, live this life. Let's not engage with an afterlife. The Buddhists would go another way with that. But if we can accept that we'll die and let that in just a little bit, and that life is uncertain, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but that's okay. It's okay to be uncertain. If we can just let a little bit of that in, a little bit of that embracing uncertainty in, it will soften our grip on things, our grip on needing to know what's going to happen, our need for certainty, which is very strong in the Western world and is large, it's high. These people in this lecture, and hey, the audience were terrified. They were putting out all these things. All the audience were giving thoughts of what was going to happen and how the world was, falling apart. And, some of them were crazy, people's ideas about, this super bacteria from turtles going to kill everybody. And someone else saying that, their biggest anxiety was the children know more than their teachers. And Dylan, my son, and I had a big laugh about that. And we were thinking, well, thank God for that, Anyways, the point is if we can start to loosen that grip, that need for things to be certain, and just live in that state of unknowing just a little bit, and that grip softens a little bit, things breathe a little bit, and life can come in. I wish you well.